So I am going to call on our dear speakers. We're going to go on a journey together. They're going to be sharing, okay, about how we can get started, how we can revive what we have already started, and how we can accelerate the journey as well. So kindly give a warm God bless you to our speakers, Caroline and David, as they take us on this journey.
Thank you. Now, we're going to do it a little bit different. So, we were going to split the room into two, but as we've been told, we'll also just do it as one, single one. So I'll talk and David will talk and we'll add to it as well. What became apparent for me when I was starting off was clarity. Okay, I needed to be clear about what I was doing. This was not my normal way of thinking, by the way. I was taught by my mentor. We sat down and said, what do you want to achieve? I heard him speak, I was inspired, and I was thinking about money. I was a stay-at-home mom, so my figures were somewhat quite small in my thinking. And in those conversations, I then had to literally dig deep and find what's my real motivation. Why do I want to have the money? When you're not clear about the vision, the Bible tells us that a man without a vision will perish. You won't die, literally, but it's your ability to be able to grow and become is what dies. So you have to be clear so you know that what will pull you when things get really tough is those things on your goals. So don't be too spooky, too spiritual. It has no earthly use to you. Make sure it's practical and it makes sense to you, because that's what's going to drive you. Because all of us, when we are in our own homes, on our own, it's our own circumstances. It's the things that will keep you awake at night by yourself. It's those things you want to sort out. Not what Sister so-and-so is confessing or saying, but it's actually the reality of what should it be for you. So one of the things for me, on a personal note, was I've heard I'm blessed to be a blessing. So many times. But every time I looked around, I was being a blessing, but it was really tight. And it was hard all the time. My husband was working, single income in the household. I have a child. I'm no longer able to go to work. I have family at home. My dad was one of 11, and they've all died. We were the smallest family with 4 children. The rest are in the numbers of 8, 12. So you can imagine, massive clan, and I don't have. So if I'm blessed to be a blessing, the disconnect was, I'm going to find somewhere. And asking your husband every day for money sometimes is not dignified. And you're just like, again, yes, it's our money together, but those are my other issues on my own. You understand? So I had to get real. What does that look like for you, Caroline? If you want to be a blessing to your blessing, I had to look at my family that I'm sending to school. How much money is it costing me for those people? Practical. My mother who was at home, how much is it costing me? Practical. So came up with a figure, okay, to know that this figure is what's going to help me. So I was talking about being blessed with a blessing. I was looking for financial freedom so that I would access a lifestyle that I think I will feel good. I don't have to trade my time for money. I don't have to, if I didn't do this, then I won't have. It was a case of I can actually do it. I can decide I want to go on holiday without feeling there will be nothing left. Or I can decide to give somebody something and it's okay. When I lend money to people right now, do you know I lend on this premise that if I lend to someone, whatever I lend them, I don't expect it back. And it won't dent my pocket. If I have to expect it back, it dents my pocket, I'm not lending it. Because it will ruin our relationship. But if I know I can just give it, it's okay. And they can just carry on. Yeah, but why? Because you are blessed to be a blessing. So you make your own goals and visions practical. My son was about 2, very talented. When he was born, he played drums. He would turn the home into a drumming kit. Saucepans everywhere. He'll be drumming everything in the house. And I recognized talent from a very young age. I thought, you know what? He's going to do drums. We bought him drum sets, everything else. Took him to school when he was 4. I asked the teacher, can he get some lessons? He has to wait until he's near 4. I'm like, he's already just started. By the time now, knowing what I now know, 4 years from now, these kids' gifts, if they're not developed, end up into nothing. And the lady said to me, she did me the biggest favor. If you want him to have those kinds of things, take him to private school. Private school? Private school. How much is it? That became my motivation. I knew to say, if Ashley must become what I have to do for God to make him great, I better do what I'm going to do. I'd look at them and think, this can't be the end. Even my own lifestyle, it can't be the end. So I made those things be part of my vision. And I put them out, one by one. Put them on a vision board. If you don't have one, go put one. I would see he's not going to go end up like that. This is not going to have to happen. I would see my own home, my family. I began to do things in our church. But because it was so, there were plenty in finances within the church, some things we wouldn't do. I love to do like girls together meetings, just to bless girls who, just do stuff. But everything on a shoestring. Every time on a shoestring. So I thought, you know what, I would like to, and this is still part of my dream, I would like to have a development. And this development will have multi-story accommodation where mothers with children who are going through stuff, who have no purpose and meaning, and they will just come to this place with kids, and I'll be able to impact. That's coming from me. Now, if I don't have the money, and it's not part of my vision, it won't get there. But guess what? All of that is putting that on your vision. So you have to be very clear as far as your eyes can see. If you look to the north, the south, the east, let's not just make it so biblical that it's not practical. You've got to ask yourself, if I'm going to build a business, how much money do I want to make from the business? And that drive should be based on what the money will do. What will the money buy? Freedom. Freedom to do what? Impact humanity. Freedom for what? To leave a legacy for your children's children. What would that look like? So getting clarity for me was so important. Now, can you imagine these ideas? I was being taught by a man that does not know God. So the whole time, when you saw on my allocation tool, the 10%, I was shocked. The 10% of my time idea, apart from just a church, came from Steve Bolton. The guy doesn't do God. I said, Steve, but you say 10%, but, he says it's a principle. And principles will work for everybody. The rich, the poor, they will work. The godly, the ungodly, they will work. So if you tithe, your tithe is your tithe. Guess what? The wealthy are using it, and it's working for them. Why do they give away? Because God said it. Yeah. Give to who? Look after the poor. When you give on, when you lend, I saw David, I said, David, I'm going to lend, I'm going to give to these poor people. Why is it? Because every time that I give to poor people, I lend to God. Imagine if you lend to God, how much comes back to you? I better find who is poor. So I can lend to them and lend to God. Right? I can give to them and lend to God. Makes sense? So part of my goals were to be blessed, be a blessing, financial freedom for access so I could have the better lifestyle, holidays, education, build my mom's lovely home, and I never got to build my mom a lovely home for her. I bought her a house before, but she died before I could build a lovely home for her. So if you have no parents, put that on your goal. Build it for them. Business goals. My business goals were quite clear, and I said to Steve, I want to earn some money, and he's like, how much? I said, Steve, I don't need anything right now, I just want to make money. He's like, well, how much? I said, well, I told him the figures, like, Caroline, why don't you aim a bit higher? How about you aim to become a millionaire? Can you imagine that goal? I was like, Steve, jokes. He's like, of course you can. And I'll tell you what happened. The first mentoring call session we went on together. And we were looking for houses. We went to Swindon, the area that I lived in. Did the numbers. Found the first property. Purchase price, 250. No, purchase price, 350. Negotiated to 270. Ended up having to do it creatively at 250. Turn that house into a house of multiple occupation, a HMO. Rental income, how many bedrooms was our property? Sutton Road, 8. It was the first one Steve had seen that could do like proper, massive, and he helped me convert the whole thing. And that property, the goal that I wanted to make for the whole year, one house gave me the income. That's what God can do. So it's not because I'm bragging. I am trying to really make God bigger and tell you, if you don't have a goal, actual financial goal you're aiming for, your strategy to get there, you will not have. Because every goal will determine the strategy you need to take you to your goal based on where you're at today. Does that make sense? Great. So when you design your goals, it's important for you to look at all areas of your life. Don't shortchange yourself and focus on just the money. Okay? When you do your goals, look at the things that tangible and intangible things. They become the things that will pull you and draw you. Okay? Look at your spiritual life, financial life, relationships, your health and vitality. Otherwise, you can end up very, very rich with very, very poor health if you don't take care. Personal and professional development, business and career, social impact and legacy, etc. So the number one starting point towards, once you've got your clear goal and you know where you're going, you must design what we call an asset acquisition plan. What assets must I acquire over a period of time that will take me to my actual income that I'm aiming for? Does that make sense? Yeah. Because this will help you to say, in year one, at the end of every year, my family and I will sit down and we look and say, what are we acquiring this year coming? What have we acquired this year going? From that inventory, we have quarterly goals to review. Are we on track? Are we off track? Because you're working most of the time. Does that make sense? So your 10-year investment goal will help you to, first of all, identify what we'll call a financial freedom number. You want to know what freedom number looks like, your particular one. And this is just simply, if you go to work, you earn X amount of money, you earn £3,500, for example, okay? And that £10,000 takes care of all your day-to-day expenses. That's your target to start off. That's what's going to buy you your financial freedom. Now, if you're living beyond your means and being wasteful, your financial freedom number is not known. Because while you're always living in overdraft or living in credit, so you want to cut down on where you've got loopholes, where there's wastage within your money. So you want to use the 7 envelope system to look and identify where's my money going, and the way you do that effectively, tracking. Track your money every day. What comes in, but what's going out, and where is it going? If you don't like cash, that was my starting point. Because when I had a card, I couldn't tell you went wherever. But when I had cash, I take the envelope, I see. I have to ask myself the question again. Should I buy? Should I not buy? Put it back. And then you begin to develop a habit of becoming a good investor. So look at an acquisition plan. Within an acquisition plan, you have what we call an annual savings target. So you'll be saving money towards building your portfolio of properties. Have an exit strategy. How will I come out? Should things happen and things change, how will I be exiting my property investment portfolio? Have a detailed projections and what you want to achieve in the future, and also what you actually want. So you're always having to measure. You don't just do the writing today, we're good with the whole business plan, we're all happy, but we never check it. We don't know whether we're on target or off target. It's always a moving target, so your job is to ensure that you know, are we on track or are we off track? Have what you use called as KPIs. These are just key performance indicators that will help you indicate, are you on track? The last one is you must always perform extensive due diligence within your asset acquisition plan, knowing all the numbers to the T that you're clear. So I'm going to talk to you about residential property investments that you could look at, okay? So if you're active right now as an investor, whether even you have a home, now there's 2 types of people. There will be those who we'll call them accidental landlord. So you bought a property, she's laughing, you bought a property because you're living in it. Your circumstances changed, jobs or whatever, so you relocate to another location, and the house you bought, you put it up on rent. You are an accidental landlord because you didn't plan it to become, you just happen to be one, okay? So if you're in that category, you want to understand, what could I do? So these are the different residential property investments that one must begin to think about, okay, depending on where you're at. So you have conventional buy-to-let. This is a home you just buy and put it up to rent. So it's straightforward, just normal conventional buy-to-let properties. The second one is a flip. You buy a property that needs doing to it, and therefore you buy it a little bit cheaper. You do some renovations to adding value to the property, and at the end you bring it up to the current market price, and then you decide to sell it. So you sell it at a profit. So you flip the particular property. HMO, which is capital intense and time intense, is a house of multiple occupation. Usually they like student accommodation. So you buy a house, turn it into rooms, rent it out. That was my model. That's how I made money. So we supplied quality, affordable accommodation to working professionals, not students. That's what Steve taught me to be able to do. Service accommodation, we've heard it talked about. Many of us have been on seminars where you buy a property and turn it into almost like an Airbnb kind of thing. They fall into your service accommodation. So somebody will come, a contractor, rent a room from you for X number or the whole house, and therefore you're changing it all the time. So that's service accommodation. Rent your spare room. This is again in fact the government allow you to, if you're okay with it, to have one of your spare room. If you're on your own or two people, rent it out to earn some income, right? So it's a starting point to become an investor. Lease option, where you lease a property with an option to buy. Find a property, you like it, it can work for whatever strategy, and then you decide to lease it from somebody. So you agree a price today. Property is like, okay, this house, I'll buy it off you at £120,000. That's what you have agreed. You start to rent it from that person, and then after 5 years, your agreed period, you have the right to exercise that option, okay? So you've just taken control of the house to exercise that option to buy it at the price you had agreed. So if you bought a house that was a 3 or 4 bedroom house, turning it into HMO, you have multiple rooms, you're making more cash flow, and you feel after 5 years, I've saved up a deposit, I have some money, I can actually now buy this house at the price we had agreed. So the seller can never sell it to somebody else without you being the first one to have refusal. Yeah? So it's a consideration for you to think about. Same as rent to rent, we've heard talk about rent to rents. So again, you rent a house from a landlord or somebody who will be happy to lend it to you, and then you rent the house into usually a house of multiple occupation or service accommodation. So you're basically just getting control of the house. You're not becoming the owner of the house. You're not benefiting from capital growth. It's somebody else's house. Does that make sense? But it allows you to get started within residential. So you hear, how many people have been to seminars in the room? Property seminars. Okay, so what I'm talking about is making sense, isn't it? So you've heard some of these terminologies before. So this is the way you can get started in getting to look at property investments in the UK today. Old people's homes, okay, is another avenue where I believe if you have got a home and you would like to maximize on rental income, those kinds of services, they are very, very good. Supported living is very, very good. So you can buy a house and offer a service to the local authority, and they pay you for that service. So if you own the house, you charge rent plus services. So you become your own McDonald's. Now you own the underlying asset, but also you're getting the rental income from the services as well. So you have a double whammy. Does that make sense? How many people in the room are in health and social care? Nurses? Okay. Those in health and social care, this is what you do every day, right? You go to work in that place. So if you're doing that work, so if you are able to watch what happens every day in the systems, every day of the business. Then you've gone to spy your land. So when you're done, reposition yourself to get started. And you don't have to own the house, by the way. In fact, it works to your advantage if you don't own the house. If you own the house, sometimes they scrutinize you, sometimes it can be a problem. But there we go, you can then look at investing in properties that way. Overseas investments, they're good if you know what you're doing and you trust your people back at home. I've been bitten far too many times investing back in Africa, okay? Now, that's not to say that there are no opportunities, because we just happen to get the contract to develop a city. Now, that's big, yeah? But it's very, very challenging because of the levels of corruption that we've had to put things on hold, because right now it doesn't sit quite right with my spirit, knowing that where we're going, we started off very well, but it got a bit bumpy along the way. And I tried to do smaller developments within my family and people that I know around, but to try and do a development of projects in Africa, remote control, is something else. So, but then some people are doing it, maybe it's working, right? But there is a consideration. My own philosophy is right now is what I can control. What I can't control, I'll wait. I'll park my money somewhere else. Land banking, very good. In fact, you can't do land banking in the UK. When you're driving around in your own little local corners and seeing around, you can, if you have an awareness, you can actually begin to look for pieces of land behind homes where you live and little locations that you could look at buying. They might not look to have great value, but you could buy it and bank it. After some time, that particular area could go up in value. You can decide to either develop or you can decide to subdivide and sell it off. Does that make sense? So these will be the key considerations around residential property investments as a starting point. So here are the biggest mistakes that people make in property. Number one, lack or poor personal financial planning. If you can't manage the little, you won't manage greater. To whom much is given, expect it. So if you can't manage it, unfortunately, that causes problem. A lack of clarity on the strategy. Too many times, people will talk about all these ideas, yeah? But you're not clear on which one particular one you should pick up on and begin to work with. So you need to understand, where am I this season, this time, that I should focus on. When I started HMOs, that's all I did. Did I get offers? Yes. To do singlets? Yes. Did I get offers to do commercial? Yes. Did I do any of them? No. Why? I had to make my one work because I was clear. I was looking at cash flow producing assets. That's all. So anything else would be good to my ears, but not good for my everyday investment. And once I got to that place, I was able to move on. So clarity on strategy. If you're not clear on the knowledge that is needed, unfortunately, you will make some mistakes that will cost you big time. One other area is poor due diligence. Many people don't perform extensive due diligence around location. We've all seen maybe Sarah Bainey on TV talk about location, 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 location. They're making things look pretty Stevie. But actually, if you take time to understand the locations according to the towns and the streets and knowing which corners, you will know not to make a poor investment. Poor financial viability of a particular local area, also something for you to take into account. You must understand what in our area will cause the properties to be on demand, number one, so you can have it occupied. And number two, happening within the economy of that local particular area. Every area, I'm telling you, will either cost you or make you money. Your job is to know which area must I invest using that strategy. If you go and put a HMO in a particular piece of, in a particular area of Swindon, where I started off, you will never get a tenant, because that place is just known to just troublesome people all the time. If it's tenants, they don't pay. So if you have a working professional who's your target market, they won't go and live there, but it's in the same town. But it's not the same town, it's the streets that you put the house in. So there's an area called Toot Hill. So Toot Hill also has corners. One part of Toot Hill you can buy up to a certain particular place. The other area you don't even consider going, because go there at 6 o'clock, it's a different place altogether. It's the same street. Does that make sense? So you want to know exactly how to go about in doing that. A weak power team. You must have people on your team. You heard me talk about your power team. You must have people on your team that will help you along the journey who know what they're doing. Just because somebody says, I'm a lawyer, doesn't mean that they're good conveyancing solicitor. Just because someone says, I'm a broker, doesn't mean they have access to all other products on the marketplace. So your job is to first do your own due diligence on the team as well and strengthen your team. Having a landlord mentality versus an investor's mentality. A landlord buys a house and everything is mediocre. We just run it so we can get the rent and go and buy bread from the rent and buy milk and everything else. You can come back, the toilet is broken, I will fix it whenever. Or there's a new regulation where you start dodging the local authority. That's not an investor. That is a landlord. And you better be far away if you want to become wealthy from becoming a landlord. Be an investor. The last one, the biggest mistake is analysis paralysis. I'm sure you've heard it. Every day you're analyzing. Every day you're still doing something else. No, I'm still thinking. Now, to make it even worse, the church. Every day I am praying about it. I'm waiting to hear from the Lord. The waiting to hear from the Lord will leave you in poverty. I'm telling you, I'm not encouraging to take action without, but I'm saying, even when you act on what the principle says and say, Lord, back this one. It's a way, you said you will bless the works of my hand. Right now, that's all I know to do. Help me. And you start to go, won't he correct you? Yes. Will he say to you, you're going to just make it just because I'm God? No. But we spend time because we are afraid half the time. And so we hide behind praying for it. Because we have no confidence. Hide behind praying for it. So here is what we decided to do. Following on from our success in our property business, we then decided to see what can we do to buy properties and make our money go a long way for ourselves and to help others as well. So we began to hear about the news. What was selling in the news? Cheap houses in the north. You can buy a house for how much? 5,000. So I was like, 5,000? What house can you buy for 5,000? 5,000 to 20,000. Your money can actually work. I said, do you know what? Let me just see. I'm doing this. Let me just go. Now, I did not employ anyone to do it. I myself got in the car, said to Michael, I want to explore what this looks like. Because maybe I could just buy the whole town. Right? And then you have the whole thing. So we went and drove. And that's because someone sent me a lead. And it's a company that promotes sourcing. They source properties for you. There's a massive list, and they've told me 20,000. So I thought, okay, they've told me that particular then. Let me then obviously go and have a look and see. And we went to these places. Thank you for reminding me about them, just getting started. Went to these places, and I'll tell you, the very first one was Peterlee, okay, in the very north. And they did have houses, by the way, for 10,000, for 5,000, and 20,000. But man, I do know a little bit about due diligence. So I know what time to go and see who lives in that street. First thing in the morning, we just arrived in the morning, people are drinking alcohol. So I was like, bad sign. By the time lunchtime is coming, it's a very different. People are wearing onesies in the afternoon, right? You're supposed to be at work and you're in a onesie drinking something. Good indicator. There's 3 o'clock, kids come back from school, right? Not every child is coming back from school because some of them are like in scooters. So you know, no wonder it's 10,000. I'm not putting my money here. We went, so also don't hear from what others will just say and tell you. So there's so many, and they're there. I can pull up my presentation and show you on right now We will find those ones for 5,000, even 1,000. So if someone must sell you 1,000 house, what are you buying? Problems. So it's not an investment. Does that make sense? So we then thought, okay, let's move up the game a little bit. Let's start and find other houses. So we found some other ones that were like in their 40s. Okay, so the 40s ones, because we knew there was a loophole. Okay, now I want to try and find opportunities in different places. And there was this loophole that you didn't have to pay stamp duty on anything below 40. We went to find those hard ones. They too, they were just a little upgrade from that other model. So we thought, okay, let's advance and move forward. Moving, the challenge was, the cheaper they were, these properties are not necessarily mortgageable. So if the bank's scared of it, so should I go run for it? Unless I know what I'm doing. So we found little hotspots, anything above the 50. And now we did find, I have to say, we did find one that was in its 40s. I think it was 46. It was a repossession. No, it wasn't a repossession. The person had died. And so it was in his 40s, and the banks had that property to sell it off because the person, I think they owed money, whatever. It was quite complicated with the ownership. However, that property was in a good location. It was just being sold below market value because it was run down. So that was the only reason to buy that particular one. So we bought it. Okay, it was a rundown property, so we bought it cash, did a lot of work to it. We did a lot of work to it, and then we were able to refinance later on. But however, the places to look at are areas where you know the banks also are good to lend. So we found certain areas of which we are investing right now in the northeast. So these ones will be 60,000 plus houses, okay? And you can't buy, I know you're in London, you can't buy property that's about 60,000, that is the whole house, you own it, not a mortgage. So we have spent time looking at areas in Sunderland, Middlesbrough, Northeast, and a few other locations in the north. These ones are better investment areas. You have access to products through your mortgage lenders, you get better quality tenants, you get higher rentals, lower voids, and obviously you get potential growth in these particular areas. So it is true, you can actually buy properties in the north that are cheaper. So if you're thinking of starting or you're thinking of leveraging your property portfolio, you can consider that. The three major barriers to entry for many people is, number one, having investment capital. I don't have money, where do I start from? Number two is getting the correct knowledge of how to go about in getting the properties in those particular areas. Number three is having the right investment mindset. So to be an investor, you must think a particular way so you can leverage opportunities that come around your way. So why do I bring up the next slide? We want to look at investing in the southeast of England versus investing in the northeast or northwest of England. The difference is starting point in terms of having access to money. How do you make your money grow and your money go a long way? If you're in the southeast, the cost of buying a property is a lot more than it is in the northeast. So I know because I've done it myself. So we're in the southwest of England. I know the cost of property in Swindon and the surrounding areas will be a lot more than it is buying in the centre of London. Will be a lot less than buying centre of London. But in the northeast, it's a lot cheaper. Yeah? Do you want to talk about this one, David? Yeah.
Hi everyone, thanks David. So just added on from what Caroline was speaking about.
Oh, by the way, he won't call me mum in front of everyone. He will call me Caroline.
Thank you. So we've got two examples here. We've got the southeast and then we've got the northeast. So looking at the example on the southeast, £350,000 purchase price. That's typically what you're going to pay around the south. So if you're looking around Oxford or Reading or Swindon, maybe not quite in London, but that's typically what you'd expect to pay for a house. In terms of the deposit, it will set you back just over £100,000, including the stamp duty. So you've got to pay 25% down, and then the bank will pay the remaining 75%. The rental would be about $1,200, $1,250 per month. That's what you can expect to get. Anyone who's got a property at that kind of value might be getting a similar rental. Mortgage on that would be $656 interest only. Management fee $150 and the net profit $444. So what that breakdown just shows you is what's happening to the $1,250 rental income that you're getting. You've got just over $600 going directly to service the mortgage, $150 to the management and the insurance of the property. So you're only actually getting $444 every month from the £100,000 that you've actually invested. So that's a 5% return. Now when you take the, we'll take the same money in a minute, but we'll look at an option in the northeast. So a house at £80,000, deposit would be $20,000, rental expected around $550, the insurance and the mortgage $70, and interest only mortgage $175, gives you a net profit of $300. So what's quite interesting is that you're only putting down £20,000 in the northeast and you're getting near enough a similar kind of rental. But if you take the same deposit that you're putting in the south and you put it in the north, you're going to be getting, well, 3-6, at least £900 there, or close to 1,200, between 900 and 1,200. So you're over doubling your investment. So for people who are looking at passive income and building a portfolio with passive income, northeast is a good option that we look at, just based on this example here. Thank you. Just go over an example over here when we're financing the properties. If we look at something that's £80,000 purchase price including all the costs, $79,500, refurbishment $1,500, project management $300, refinancing $90,000, money left in the deal $22,000. So what this is giving you a breakdown of a property that's purchased with cash, and at a later stage refinancing that property to pull all of that cash out. So this is quite useful for people who are looking to buy without using a mortgage and maybe looking at a later date to then pull that money out and put it into more properties. And the way it works is with the loan to value of 75/25. So you can see here the refinance cost is 90,000, and this is from an example from an investor that we currently are working with. He bought the property for 80,000, including all of these fees, solicitors, etc., including the refurbishment. And 6 months later, we decided we would like to refinance the property, so we got it revalued. Surveyor came round to the house, went around it, asked a few questions, and then gave a value of 90,000. With that valuation of 90,000, we then approached the bank, or the bank then took the report and offered a 75/25 loan to value ratio, leaving £22,000 in the deal. Now, if you work out how much cash would have been put in initially, including all the fees, it'd be around 27,000. So they're actually leaving less money in the deal and pulling all of their cash out, ready to invest into something else.
So I think it's just important to help you understand the various ways in which to finance your properties. So you can purchase the property cash, you can get cash, you can get a mortgage, you can release equity from your property, your primary residence, you can do joint ventures, you can work for angel investors, you can liquidate your assets, you can get savings from a savings circle, you can get a bank loan, you can maximize bridging loans. So don't let the fact that you haven't got money stop you. So think creatively as to what can I do to get myself started. So David talked about saving. If you have cash, that's how you would do it. The reason you're doing this is because you want to make money begin to make its own money. So if you use the one, you use that money, draw the cash out, buy another one, draw that cash out, buy another one, and in the end you have multiple properties. If they go up, it's not going up in value by one house, but by a number of them. But once you've reached your ideal target of how much income you want, then you start to repay because you've arrived at what you wanted. So this is how I would use the bank's money. So I make the money from the bank's money and then be able to move forward like that. So that's with savings. So if you're looking at equity, so you go for equity. So we did have equity, okay, when we were starting off, and that's how I was able to pay for our fees for our mentor, is because we had to refinance, okay? So you take money out of your current existing property to invest in a property or in properties. These have to be cash flow producing. So do your own due diligence so you don't end up just buying houses that are not producing for you cash. Otherwise, you end up with more liabilities. You don't want ones or those deals that say to you, it's just washing its face. No washing its face. It must be positive cash flow, leaving me enough money should anything happen. If interest rates go up, you must protect the downside. If interest rates go up, will you still be able to afford to make the repayments? Or will you have sleepless nights? So your model must prove those things to ensure that you have protected that downside. So you release your equity, be able to buy more properties, and then put that on an interest on it for a short period of time, and then later on look at putting that on longer term repayment until it's paid off. Another way to finance is financing using savings groups. So the reason this is important, I worked with a Kenyan community. They're very good in collectively saving money. They put together, it's like a banking circle, like your savings circle. They all put in £500 every month, each one of them. But at the end of their term, they split the money. Guess what happens? You all have a lump sum and you go on to do shopping or buy something else. They don't invest. So the idea is actually, if there's 4 people, I can hear people laughing, maybe they resonate with that idea, I don't know. But if there's 4 of you and each one, now, and the reason is don't make investment or property investment is so complicated and so far-fetched. Think about it from where you are. Where can I start? If there's 4 of you and you have just normal jobs, maybe a nurse or whatever, and you each put down £500 from extra shifts that you would do, so it's not going towards anything else but the investment, and there's 4, you end up with £2,000 a month. At the end of the year, by month 13, you will be ready to buy a property as a collective. So you can do that. The key thing is make sure you have protected each one. So set up a legal structure of some sort. This is what we did with them. Some sort, and therefore you know what the exit strategy should be, should things go wrong or the arrangement not work, okay? So always consider that there is always a starting point around investments. You must become bankable. To be an investor, there are some things that banks will look at before they can lend you any money. Number 1, proof of funds. So you want to buy a house, you must have a deposit that you have to put down. And as an investment product, they will only give you 25%. You must find 25%. They will give you 75%. That's for this residential one. It's not for your principal primary residence that you can get a 10% mortgage. Investment one is 25% you must have. That's why the demonstration of how much you need is so important. Number 2, your credit score. If your credit score is poor, banks don't see you favorable. So therefore, that would be a stumbling block for you to get started investing in property. The third one, last but not least, is affordability. They will look and see how much can you afford for them to be able to lend you. So banks usually will lend you up to 4 to 4.5 times what your annual income is. So if you earn 20K, for example, they will lend you up to 90,000. So if you're going to buy a house and the cost of the house is 200,000 and they'll lend you 90, you better have 110. Because if you don't have 110, then you won't be able to buy. Hence, buying in the north makes it more affordable. Because all you need to have is what? 20,000, right? Yes. Is it 20,000? No. Yeah, 28,000, right? So all that is happening is in the north you can afford it because they'll look and say, okay, the property price is 80,000. They're going to put down 20,000, so you can afford to lend them 60,000. So if they can give you 60K and and your affordability is on 90, you passed it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So make sure that you're in line with all of those things. Consideration. Many people will consider, what should I do? Should I take out an interest-only mortgage or should I take out a repayment? Okay. This, for me, if I'm looking at being able to buy and leverage my growth over a short period of time, I would look at interest only. Because I know at the end, I'm only going to be paying per month a smaller amount. And when it comes to a certain stage when I have satisfied my purchasing, then I will look at a repayment. But if you don't like the risk, take what you feel is comfortable, but get started. Yeah? So case study, there's one particular person, and I've called the person DM, okay? This particular person, we were sitting down just a few days ago discussing, where do you want to be? They said, I want to do property investments. Okay, fair enough, that's what we want to do. Let's have a target. Where do you see yourself in the next 5-6 years? They said, I would like to be in a position whereby I'm not trading my time for money. Okay, what is your financial freedom number? 2,700. That then should become our drive. What do you have right now? I have a house that I live in right now, and it has equity. Okay, of the equity, what can you pull out to draw out? I could pull out 120,000. Fair enough. Of the 120,000, what can we take out? So the idea was, if we could take some money out and buy her first 3 properties, okay, from the 100,000. So she funds the 28 that David was talking about, finds the 30,000, purchases the 3 properties. From the income she's earning, after paying off all of her bills, she would end up with £900. The question was, can you afford to save any money from your day job today? She said yes. Can you afford to save £1,000 a month? She said yes. Good. So if we take your £1,000 plus the 900 from rental income, you got 1,900 per month coming in. So if we save all of that, will we be able to buy a house in how long next year? Yes. She'll have made her savings target. So which means every year we'll be adding to it. So if you look at this example, it literally just shows you, year 1, she buys 3, that gives her 900. Year 2, buys a third one, her rental income goes up from 900 to how much now? 1,200. The other year, it goes up to how much? 1,500. So there's a point whereby you will get to a stage, whatever you have made and you're making within your property investments can actually buy property on its own without you needing to be able to save. And then you get to your 3,000. So for her, by year 6, it will get her to her time. She can decide, do I want to repay or do I want to carry on? It's up to her. Or do I want to change and stop buying in the north and come and buy in the south for capital growth as well? She's got that choice. Does that make sense? Yeah. So you just got to think around, what can I do to be able to do that? So that's a case study. So here is what we do. Now let me just say something. So I asked David to come and speak, okay? David's been working with me from when obviously he was young. But when he was 16, he came to work with me in our business. And that was an amazing journey. He worked with me and he said, Mom, it's good, I've learned some things, but I can't work for you. And no, you weren't 17, you were 18, no, 17, isn't it? Can't wait for you, I'm going to go get myself a job. So I was like, you leave your business, you go work for a job? And he went to work for an estate agent. He worked for that estate agent for, how long were you at Harris? No, not that long. Yeah, however long. Worked with this company, and then later when he comes back, says, Mom, I'm leaving. I can't stay here any longer. I've got an opportunity. Where are you going? To Dubai. Dubai? I'm going to Dubai as an estate agent. I was like, David, how did you just, I'm gone. Did the interview, and the child went. And he worked in Dubai for 6 years. And when he came back, I have a different child. I'm like, do you know what? Thank God for his going. Because now, I said, now David, and I thank God for lockdown, because obviously he's had to come back. So lockdown happened and he came back home. But his coming back home has allowed us to think, you've got the skill that you got there. How do we use it on the ground? And man, this kid's smart. Yeah. You can hear him like this. But I put him on the ground. So he spent half of his life in the northeast doing the properties and buying the properties. During lockdown, I stopped all this talking. I wasn't doing this. When I met Shola, this is the first speaking event that I'd agreed to do. I just stopped the whole thing. But he came back and he was running with the Kingdom Portfolio Building business. And in lockdown, he managed to buy over 32 houses. So he does. So a lot of what you hear him talk about now, he does it. They do diligence. I don't do a lot of that. We just check it and make sure it's all right. But basically, he does it. So I'll explain to him what his findings are, or what due diligence is key to successful investments. Yeah?
Okay, so when I'm in the north, I'm generally looking at houses, maybe meeting up with some property managers or just doing general due diligence. Now, when we're doing the due diligence on property, there's quite a few things that we will be looking at. The first thing is the most obvious, is doing your online research. So when you're doing your online research, it's not just a case of looking at Rightmove. It's also maybe looking at Street Check. It can be looking at streets close by to see what they've rented for, what they've sold for, just doing general research around here. When you're on the ground, you're more so looking at the street itself, looking at the neighbours, you're looking at the roofs, you're looking at how well kept the back alleys are. There's quite a few different things. If the windows are boarded or unboarded, do the neighbours invest a little bit of money into their house in double glazing? It's probably one of the most important things I would say. If you're on a street and you see their wooden doors, or no one on that street's bothered to replace their doors and windows or the double glazing, it's probably not a good street, because no one there is investing into their own house, which shows that there are many homeowners over there. So that's one useful thing that I look at, among quite a few others. So I'll go into the due diligence about the online research in a bit more detail with the due diligence spreadsheet. But yeah, in terms of due diligence on the ground, we'll be looking more so around the properties. Oh, right, okay. All right, I'll go through it here. So when we're looking at a street, we want to know who's living there, who the tenants are they employed, are they unemployed, are there students there, what kind of employment are they in? Is it high skilled, low skilled, medium skilled? You can get all this information on Street Check. So we put this on a due diligence spreadsheet, so all the information there is quite clear. So it will tell you at a street of 200 people, let's say 80 of them are going to be full-time employed, 30 are going to be part-time employed, some will be retired, some will be unemployed. Okay, right, here it is. So the demographics of the street is really important. So you can see just on the screen over here, just around ownership, social class split, that shows you if people are in high skilled or low skilled employment. You've also got the schools just below. You have full-time, part-time employment. It just gives you a really good idea. In your street where you might have lived for 10 years, you might have an idea who the neighbours are, but when you're going up to the north, you don't know who lives there, you don't know what kind of tenants to expect. Using these bearings will give you a good idea. As well as this, just on the due diligence, we've got comparison on pricings. So we'll do a brief at the top, which just gives you an idea of what the house is like. Does it have new doors and windows? Does it need a new boiler? Does it have a garden? Does it have parking at the front of the house? These are small details that each house is going to have a specific KPIs, I'd say. Each property will be different. So we've got a brief at the top, and just below is the pricing. So if we're looking at a house that's 90,000, you want to know that the rest of the houses in that street are selling around 90, 95 ideally. Otherwise, you're overpaying. So it's collecting all of this data and finding out what's sold recently, what's sold in the last year, has it gone up in line with the average percentage increase with the property market in general? If it has, then great. If it hasn't, then maybe move on to something different. It's really key part. If you haven't done your due diligence correctly on a property, it can all fall apart before you even get started. So it's quite important. I like to have my own criteria, so I've got quite a few different boxes that I tick. So for example, boiler, electrics, these are very basic ones, but these are part of the criteria that I like to tick off before going ahead with a house. So you've got a guide. If you have a guide of say 15, 16 points, that gives you an idea of what a good house will look like. That could benefit you quite a lot. If you miss something, it could cost you quite a lot. If you miss a rewire, that can set you back £2,000–3,000. You miss a boiler, it's 1,500. You miss the roof, that can save you £4,000. So it's just knowing what can the house potentially cost me, and how do I avoid those costs by doing your due diligence at the start. If it's down to a tenant, maybe you don't want to have a tenant in a particular location because they're known to trash the place, or that street's known to have copper go missing. There's loads of copper in the boilers. I mean, people come in, take your boiler, not ideal, but it does happen in some areas. So yeah, that's the importance of due diligence. I definitely pay attention to that. Okay, our solicitors. We've got two decent solicitors that we're working with at the moment. But having the right solicitors and the right legal team behind you when you're progressing a sale is very, very important. You can spend all your time doing the due diligence, getting the right house. And if you haven't got the right solicitor progressing the sale, it could just fall apart and all your time is wasted. And you'll find it difficult to get the searches back. So having the right legal team, maybe one that's recommended from a friend, maybe one that you previously worked with before or you vetted, or I wouldn't just go off reviews, but definitely having a strong solicitor is something that will get the deal ahead. Compliance. Another one, quite boring, but you do have to take this into consideration. If you've got a property manager, they'll normally keep up to date with all the compliance issues that you've got to maintain for your house to be compliant. A new regulation that's coming up very soon in 2025 is EPC. So if you've got a rented property and it is not rated C, you will have to get it to an EPC rating of C by 2025 if you're renting out the property. Property managers will be always up to date with this. If you're quite busy and you're not looking to be an active investor and you're more passive and you don't want to be bothered by any of this, your property manager should be able to help you out with that. But it's good to just be aware of it as well. Gas and electric safety checks. There was a new regulation that just came out called the EICRs, which is an electrical certificate. That costed people quite a bit of money. And a couple of investors had to put their hand in their pocket for that. So it's just being aware of what changes could come in the future that you might have to be aware of, so it doesn't cost you money. Now the letting side of things, you've got to get it right because that's going to be the person that's paying your paying your mortgage and also your profits. You can find tenants that staying for a year, 6 months. In the northeast, you'll find tenants sometimes stay there for 10–15 years. Some stay for 8. It's not unknown. It's quite common. We've got a couple of tenants for our investors who have been there for 8–9 years and they're quite comfortable and they want to stay there long term. Haven't got plans to buy it, they're just quite happy staying there. Now, getting a good tenant like this will be heavily dependent on what property manager you have and how good they are, how well they know the area, how well they know the locals, which tenants to move in, which tenants not to move in. We've got 2 property managers, which we're very grateful that we're in touch with because they're great. But if they weren't good, they wouldn't fix problems. For example, if tenants haven't paid, they won't get the right tenants in that might be more interested in just moving someone in straight away without making sure it's someone that's going to look after the house. So yeah, letting side of thing is really, really important. When you're getting a tenant in there, you've got to know that they're going to be essentially servicing the mortgage long term. So you want to make sure that they're the right person in there. Okay. Ongoing management for the rental collection, dealing with challenging tenants, including eviction process, what your property manager does. Things do go wrong sometimes. As Caroline said, we did find 32 houses last year. Of the 32, we had issues with 3 tenants. 2 of them were minor, one of them was a little bit more serious. The serious scenario, we had one of our property managers, Lisa, actually sort out the issue. Tenant was 3 months behind their rent. She managed to liaise with them after a lot of back and forth and her not giving up and turning up at the house, etc., etc. And the tenant is now just half a month's outstanding on the rent. So it's a good result. Tenant didn't leave, managed to recover the money back. But that's the kind of team that you want supporting you. So when you do have a property manager, it's important that you have someone that's as proactive as that. Okay. Statutory responsibilities. So what are the statutory responsibilities? These are legal requirements from Inland Revenue and Companies House. So if you're purchasing in a limited company, you'll need to have an accountant file your accounts. Unless you're qualified to do it yourself, I'd use an accountant to definitely do that. What they consist of, filing accounts, PAYE, if you're going to, depending on how many staff you have or if you're going to be paying yourself, I'd definitely get an accountant to do that, just so you're compliant and everything's done correctly. Mistakes here can cost you again. You can get fined if you don't submit things on time or you don't do it correctly. And also, an accountant generally will probably save you money by the knowledge they have, which you may not. Setting up and the famous Section 24. Anyone here heard of Section 24? Yeah? Lovely, isn't it? So with Section 24 coming out, quite a few people looked at restructuring and replanning how they're going to own these properties and how they can not just continue owning, but also how they're going to be purchasing more in the future. So for anyone that doesn't know, the change that Section 24 brought into property investors was if you owned a property before Section 24 and let's say the mortgage was £500 a month and the rental was £1,000 a month, you would be able to offset the £500 against the profits. When Section 24 came in, they wouldn't allow you to offset the expenses associated with the house against the profits. So people moved and looked at different options. One of the options is a limited company. An accountant can advise you properly depending on your own circumstances, which could be dependent on your earnings. It might be dependent on your if you're married or you're single. There's a few different things that can affect how you're going to be setting up. So accountant's a good point to start off with. But a limited company can help. A limited company does allow you to offset the expenses So this is the reason why some people use that vehicle to purchase. Also for inheritance tax, capital gains, taxes always change. I learn every single day. I listen to some interesting videos. I've got a bit of knowledge. I would like to share it in case I tell you the wrong thing. But there's a lot to learn on taxes. I'm always learning loads, but an accountant can properly educate you and sometimes prevent you from paying tax at all. They might be able to reduce your capital gains bill by a lot. They can do a lot of things, so it's definitely worth exploring that option. The types of structures that you can set up as a sole trader, limited company, partnership, use group companies, offshore, but again, you can get someone to advise you on that. Okay, I'll pass you back to Caroline. Thank you for listening.
And if it is not working, what will you do to begin to make it work? So you have to decide to embark on getting the right knowledge needed so you can get the portfolio to work. For those who haven't got a portfolio, is where do I start from? Do I have to come up with clarity on where am I income-wise every time? Where is it all going? How do I begin to allocate my money so it begins to grow and then I could use that for investments? Or could I even consider starting to learn another strategy that doesn't require for me to have lots of money getting started? And it is possible. So it's all these things that you have to begin to think, how could I be active and be more intentional in being able to get started? For those, and for, I beg your pardon, for those of you who are already on the way going, is how do you improve what's working and how do you make things work even better? How do you capture other market shares that are really looking, a lot appetizing? My own scenario, I told you we were doing HMOs before for working professionals. When lockdown came, guess who was furloughed? Working professionals. So guess where my business was going? A different direction. So when I said we had to stop everything, it was literally because we had to re-strategize. We had to reskill and do something different. So I had to get into a different space that is very unique, very different from what I would do ordinarily, so I could get my portfolio to begin to work and give me more income. So wherever you are, just question yourself, is this taking me towards wealth creation, or am I just simply getting by? And if I have got properties, are they really working? So now we've had to rethink, okay, there's equity in these houses, how do we spread? Because I've seen it grow. If I can see a house go from 120,000 to 240, 250, I'll take the cash out and buy more, because it's worked. So rather than end up with a portfolio of 5 million or 6 million, I'll end up with a portfolio of 12 million. So when they all go up, they'll all go up in value, all of them, not just one house. So that's my take, okay? That's how I would do it. So don't stay where you are. I hope that the time we spent together has allowed you to begin to think, what can I do creatively? We've shared about strategies you can embark upon, right? So you can think about what can I do, which particular one will work for me. And the next thing is just you getting started. So decide, if you're going to be an active investor, decide to design your own destiny. Put together your own plan. How you're going to acquire property knowledge and execute. Remember, do not procrastinate. Don't stay on analysis paralysis year upon year. Instead, begin to move forward. So from who we are at KPB, just in case you're thinking, I would like to explore buying properties in the north, I'd like to explore becoming a passive investor. We do offer a service, the one that David is talking about right now. So we do actually work. Now, we're not a deal sourcing company, just so you know, because they're deal sourcing companies, and what they will do, they'll give you deals, which I found before when I went there myself, and those deals did not match my goals and dreams, because they're not performing their due diligence that I would like to buy. So therefore, they just buy and selling me houses in Peterlee, in all those areas where there is nothing happening economically. So now this is what we do is we don't do deal sourcing. We help families develop and grow property portfolios on a passive basis, because you haven't got the time and the know-how to get it doing. And so we're not here for everyone and for everything else, but in fact, it's just to let you know this is what we do. So what will we do? We'll sit together and design your acquisition plan. So you know what you're working with. It's not one thing is done, it's actually a moving target because the economies change and things do happen. We'll find a property for you, perform the due diligence, view the property, negotiate best and final offer gets accepted, introduce you to our solicitors, get a memorandum of sale, call the broker and apply for a mortgage, make sure you're bankable, the surveyor views the property, the valuation is done, the underwriter offers you the property, the finance, contracts exchange, you transfer, completion is done. So it's a journey on a passive, so you're not working, we are not working on our own, you're not working on our own, we're working in partnership. We collect the keys, it's your deal, it's not my deal. KPP check things on a daily basis with you and showing you and guiding you, but you actually end up having the property. So we're working in partnership and answer. So we do what we call paper chasing. So we chase everything to make sure you can get the goal started. Does that make sense? Yeah. How many people in the room would like to consider passive investments in the Northeast? Great. So the opportunity is open. You want to consider it, come talk to David and myself and we can have conversations. And if those who just want to carry on and get to learn and to know, the one thing I will say is when you leave this room, please make it a point next year to be in a different position. Because if you don't, it's a waste of resource for everybody. Not just for me, but for the organizers and for yourself. So do yourself a favor, aim to be in a different space next year, 2023. God bless you.